Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our class, which is dealing with the concepts of Hanukkah in the Kabbalistic mode. And before we go any further, I want to say hello to everyone else. And so we are starting a little early today, so the crowds are sparse. But here, say hi, everyone. This is we begin with Hilda.
Hi, nice to be here. My name is Hilda.
Thank you. Good to see you. And Patty. And there's Gail.
Good morning.
And there's Iris. And there's good old Mel. Good old Mel.
Maritza.
Oh, Maritza. In the corner. Okay. Last week, as we begin to wind down this essay, this discourse, this Kabbalistic and Hasidic mystical presentation about Hanukkah, we came back to one of the original questions, which was, what would be the comparison between Hanukkah and the previous festival of Sukkot, of Sukkot? And the reason why we asked this question is because in the discussion of how many lights should be lit each night, Beit Shammai suggests that we light 8 lights the first night and 7 the second night until you get down to 1 on the 8th night. And his reasoning is because when the festival of Sukkot occurs, the Torah requires the Jewish people to offer bulls, to sacrifice bulls in the temple. And 13 bulls on the first day of the festival, and 12 on the second day, and 11 on the third day, 10 on the fourth day, 9 on the fifth day, 8 on the sixth day, and 7 on the seventh day. And those are that would number 70. And the bulls are, as you see, are diminishing by day. Every day is one less than the previous day. Similarly, Hanukkah should also be one less every day. So the question was asked, I understand you found a proof that there is somewhere in the Torah where things diminish, where things go down. They start high and they finish low, but why the comparison? I understand you found something, but what's the comparison between the festival of Hanukkah and the festival of Sukkot? What do they have in common? What they have in common is that there is an 8th day of the festival of Sukkot, just like there is an 8th day of Hanukkah. Why are there 8 days? Why specifically those two holidays share 8 days? And so, as we discussed last week at great length, the world was created in a manner where there is energy, that godly energy that belongs to each element of this world. So the water and the stones and the earth, that lifeless matter, has godly energy to create it the way it is. The plants and the trees and the grasses and the flowers and the fruits and the vegetables, all of that have their own energy on a higher level to give them their appearance and their existence and their growth the way it is. The animals and the birds and the insects and the fish as well have a higher level of soul, a higher level of spirituality, of spiritual energy, which gives them the ability to exist the way they are. And finally, the human beings have their energies and the way our souls and the way we function. And the Jewish people have different types of souls, Jewish souls, Yiddish and Neshama. But that's a given. That allows us to exist, to function. The energy that human beings are able to get in touch with is an energy which is called the surrounding energy, as opposed to the inner energy. The inner energy means energy that comes into each form of existence in this world. That's a given. The fact that they exist, it indicates that there's an energy. But there's a higher energy, an infinite energy, an unlimited energy called the surrounding. Surrounding meaning it doesn't enter into the receptacle. It's there. It's out there. And it's on a higher level. So when you say number 7, 7 is the way God created this world. 1 through 7. Every single day is another day in the count of 7. When you get to the 7th day, that's the Shabbos, it starts again. And that's how the week is. It doesn't make any mathematical sense. It's a week. The reason why we have 7 days is because God created the world in 7 days. That's 7. So 7 indicates that there is a nature. And 1 through 7, every day is a different day, and then 7 ends. The highest level of nature is the 7th day of the week, which is Shabbos, or the 7th month, which is the month there's the high holidays, or the 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuos. It's all 7 high levels of 7, but 7 fits in to the standard, to the nature, the way God created this world. When you say 8, number 8 indicates that there is a higher than nature, a transcendent level. Like a bris, for example, is on the 8th day, not on the 7th day, but on the 8th day. Would one day make a difference? It might make a physical difference, but it definitely makes a spiritual difference. A bris, a covenant with God, is not a natural thing. It's a transcendent level, higher than nature. Similarly, the 8th day of Sukkot is a transcendent nature. Why Sukkot? Because Sukkot has the commandment to dwell in a surrounding level. You dwell in a hut that surrounds you. There is no other mitzvah like that outside of a mikveh, but the mikveh is without clothing, and outside of a talus, which doesn't quite completely surround the person. The sukkah, the energy of the festival of Sukkot, is the transcendent energy, the surrounding energy, the energy that surrounds the entire person with his or her clothing, with his or her used chicken bones, and the mud under your boots. It surrounds everything, indicating a total, complete surrounding energy. And that surrounding energy is very available on that festival of Sukkot. And at the very end of that festival, on the 8th day, which is number 8, because it's surrounding, transcendent, is when we transition back to the house. That's why there are 8 days to that festival. Shmini Atzeres. Shmini meaning 8, Atzeres to stop working and to focus on God again. So you have 8 days. Similarly, Hanukkah, the only other festival with 8 days, corresponds to a transcendent energy, to an energy that is from the surrounding levels of energy. And the reason why Hanukkah represents that is because Hanukkah represents light, spirituality, divinity over worldliness and simple nature. We see that in both elements of Hanukkah. In the defeat of the Greeks, it was a small band of untrained and unprepared warriors, if you will, the Maccabees, against a massive, mighty army, an army that was prepared, had weapons and had sophistication, and yet these guys went into what we would consider suicide. But their focus was, we have to stand up for God. We've got to get in touch with this deeper energy, this divine energy. And the second element, the element of the oil, which is the main focus of the holiday, which is why we light the Hanukkah menorah to illuminate the darkness with olive oil, because they didn't have enough oil for all 8 days, and it only was supposed to last for 1 day, and it lasted for 8 days. This concept of oil is a commodity that rises above anything. Whenever you put it into liquid, oil always rises to the top. It's a representative of something that's transcendent, that's above, that's higher. So in both commemorations of this festival, the miracle of the defeating of the Greek armies, which is not the real focus of this holiday, and the miracle of finding the oil and it lasting for 8 days, both of those represent a transcendent level of energy, or number 8, which is why both festivals have 8 days, and why we can now compare the two, because they both represent surrounding energy, transcendent energy, the unlimited energy which we can tap into on these festivals, and, excuse me, and draw them down into ourselves. Okay, so that's where we've gone until now.
So if the lights had stayed lit 9 or 10 days, would we celebrate Hanukkah for 9 or 10 days?
You know, that's a very, very good question, and you might not even realize how good that question is.
My daughter's not here.
She's the top, but you're getting close to her. The Talmud describes as a little diversion a child who does better than his or her father or mother as Yafe Koach Haben Mi Koach Ha'av. Yafe, it is nicer, better. Koach Haben, the energy or the inspiration of the child, Mi Koach Ha'av, from the better from the energy or the inspiration than the father or mother, than the parent. So the Rebbe says, if you look carefully at the wording, it says the energy is better from the parent. And actually, it comes from the parent that the child becomes better. That's one statement. Another statement, the Talmud says that a person can potentially be jealous of everyone except for two types of people. You are never jealous of your own child. You wish that they be better by leaps and bounds. It's not possible for a parent to be. If there is possibility, there's something wrong. And you're never jealous of your protege. You always want your protege because it's your protege. It's coming from you. It makes you look better. I always say our kids make us look great. So back to your question.
Which was?
Why 10 days?
Well, if it would have been 9 or 10 days,
Why
if it would have been 9 or 10 days, what we have said then. But in Hasidic teaching, now is not the time to really get into this, but in the mystical way of looking at festivals, one would think that we commemorate let's just say Passover on the date that the Jewish people left Egypt, because they left Egypt on that date. And we commemorate Hanukkah on this date because that's the day that they entered the temple and they found everything and they rededicated the temple. But the truth is, it's just the opposite. Now listen carefully. The reason why the Jewish people left Egypt on that particular day is because that day, the energy that comes from God on that day is conducive to Exodus. It's not that day is the day they left, therefore we commemorate it. If that would be the case, then first of all, after 3,500 years, I'm sorry, that's just too long. It doesn't mean anything to us. And secondly, despite the fact that they may have left on that day, there are other holidays that don't commemorate any particular incident that happened on that day. Like the festival of Sukkot. It doesn't have a date. Nothing happened on that date, on the 15th of Tishrei. Yet we are celebrating one of the pilgrimage festivals. So it's not the date that brings along the celebration. It's the fact that even today, we can experience that energy of liberation, of Exodus, on the festival of Hanukkah, on the festival of Passover. So we can experience that energy if we follow the way the Torah prescribes the celebration of Passover. Then we are able to experience liberation and Exodus ourselves. And the same goes with all other festivals. It's not that the date of the festival is the date, but it's the energy of that particular day. And the same thing with sad days. The sad days that we commemorate, the fast days, one of which is coming up soon, right after Hanukkah, on Friday, 2 weeks from this Friday is a fast. And the fast days that we have are because of that day is the energy can lead to unpleasant issues. The temple was destroyed on the same exact day, both temples, on the same exact Hebrew day, indicating that day is a day of destruction. It's not a good day. Deep down, it can become a good day, but that's not for now. So therefore, the fact that something didn't happen it's not just 9 or 10 days. What have happened? It was 8 days because those 8 days were the simple reason is because it took 8 days till they got their fresh olive oil back, enough to fill the menorah for a daily basis. That's a simple reason. But the deeper reason is because the energy lasts for 8 days. Why does it last for 8 days? Because 8 represents transcendent. It wouldn't last for 9 days. It wouldn't have happened for the 9 days. 9 days is not past the 8th day. It's not significantly connected to the energy. So it's really the opposite. It's not because something happened, therefore we celebrate. We celebrate it because that's the day where things like this can happen in our own lives. That's why we can celebrate something that happened so long ago. It's not an ancient memory. It's a present, it's a living legacy that continues on every single time we celebrate something. Okay. We are now in the final paragraph on page 58. And we are about to conclude this book, which we will definitely conclude next week. Because after that I go to Israel the next day. Not that there's going to be a stop in Kabbalah Coffee, God forbid, but the book will end. There'll be some other book coming up after that. Okay. So, and just as the Hanukkah lamps affect the feet of the Talmudai in 2 ways. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's get to the Talmudai before we continue here. The Talmud asks, 58. The Talmud asks, until when can one light the menorah? We light the menorah when it starts to get dark. If the sun sets, you can light the menorah. Or a Chabad custom, right before the sun sets. Fine. But it's getting into the dark. So how long does that time frame last? So the Talmud answers, until the legs of the Talmudai people will stop walking around. Who were the Talmudai people? The Talmudai people were the marketplaces, the businesses. Those days would be open from sunrise to sunset, and then that would be the end of the day. The Talmudai people would only come out at night. They were nocturnal people, and they would come out at night and sell wood. When it got night, it became darker and it became colder, and people may not have had enough wood to burn a fire. So what do? These people would wander around in the marketplaces late at night selling wood for people who may have run out of wood. It might have been a cold night, they had to put more logs on the fire, and they ran out. So they would go out to the Talmudai people. And so you see that these are people that come out only at night, meaning that they are dark people. They represent the dark forces. And furthermore, the word Talmudai, the people from Talmud, the word Talmud in Hebrew, which is a Hebrew word, has the same letters as, if you just rearrange the letters, it's moredes, rebellious. These represent rebellious people. Why would we look at that? Why would we look at it this way? Because the truth is, the question is, why in the world would the Talmud give us a name of a people that we don't? There's no way we can connect with it. We don't know who they are. And we're trying to figure out a time. You can light the menorah. You tell me about people who we don't know. So where is that going to lead us? What the Talmud is really saying here is until the people of the rebellious dark forces people cease to walk around at night. In other words, you've gotten them illuminated as well. So the idea of Hanukkah is to illuminate even the darkest elements, the darkest corners, the people who are most further of all, to get them lit up as well. That's the inner explanation and meaning of Hanukkah. The truth is, if you want to know the law about Hanukkah, is you can light the menorah as long as someone is up in the house. That means not just the person lighting it, but someone else in the house. So if you're alone in the house, then of course you can light it. But once it gets light outside, you've lost the opportunity. I have an interesting dilemma because I'm going to Israel on the 6th night of Hanukkah. But thankfully, my sister lives right near Newark Airport from where I'm flying, and so I'll go to her house. But she's having her Hanukkah party that night, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we'll get it done. I once had the Chabad representative in the state of Utah, who was originally from Italy, was flying on the last night of Hanukkah from Atlanta to Alitalia, straight to Milan, and of course stopped off over here. And you have to light it, you can't light it too early, because if you light it too early, it's like lighting it in the day. You have to light it after a certain time. And his flight was, let's say, at 6 o'clock, and he couldn't light it until 4:30, and he had to be at the airport. So I took with me in the car one of these aluminum pans, these disposable pans. I filled it up with water, and then I put the eight glass filled with olive oil. He lit the menorah in my car, sitting outside of the airport. He waited the allotted time, and then I drove with burning menorah. That's the case. What I did was I put it inside of a box. So it already had the disposable with water in it. Then I put it inside of a box in my minivan, and I drove home, and they were fine. They were bobbing on the water. So you have to be creative sometimes. You can't light the menorah on the plane, and I'm sure they won't let them light it in the airport either.
Boy, you want 10 miles in the rain.
You deserve the cake.
You could get a super red light. That'll be his time to gift.
So the bottom line is that there used to be the days where you can smoke on the planes, and then you can light up. So you just ask permission if I can light the menorah. Fire in the plane! It's the first night or second night you can sort of get away with it. Today you can't do that, of course. So, and they won't let you light it in the airport. So you got to find a place. You got to find All right. Here we go. So last paragraph. And just as the Hanukkah lamps affect the feet, it says until the feet of these people stop walking around. So we're talking about the rebels coming out at night, and their feet, the lowest extremity. So he says, and just like the Hanukkah lamps affect the feet of the Talmudai in two ways. At first, destroying and nullifying them, because the word that is used is until they are finished. Basically, destroying their rebelliousness. Doesn't mean destroying them. It means destroying the feet level, the rebellious level. It means destroying what they represent, not them. And afterwards, causing that they too should be transformed to holiness, as I was just saying. A similar pattern occurs with the offering of the 70 bulls of Sukkot, which corresponds to the 70 nations of the world. Now, we're going to read this, and then we're going to look at the footnotes and talk about this. At first, the offering causes that the nations progressively weaken, and afterward, it causes that even they assist Israel. Now, let's look at the footnote, and we will discuss this very special and wonderful idea. Footnote 118 on the bottom of 59. Sukkah, it's Talmud 55b, quoted below, footnote 126, or Bamidbar Rabbah, Rashi, quoted the next footnote, Rashi, and so on. Now, 70 nations. That's where it says all of this. Now, what's 70 nations? The Talmud speaks. There's a lot of activity going on here.
A lot of noise today.
Can we wait a few more minutes? 20 minutes? 70 nations. The Talmud speaks of there being 70 primary nations of the world. sometimes referred to as 70 languages. This number is based on Scripture's enumeration of Noah's descendants, each of whom became the ancestor of a nation. The Torah talks about Ashkenaz, which means Germany, as a descendant of Noah. Greece, Yavon, and many European countries are enumerated there. Mitzrayim, Egypt, Canaan, all descendants of Noah. Generally speaking, however, the term 70 nations is used to refer to all of humanity. If you think about nations, you say, well, wait a minute, there's 190 whatever countries in this world. Yeah, but who decided what's a country? It's just people making cuts in land and saying, this is mine, this is yours. So you have a country called Monaco, which is, a few miles. And you have a country called China, which is millions of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles, in the United States and so on. So, where do you decide what's a country? Or look at the states. You have a state like Texas, and then you have a state like Rhode Island. I mean, so how does that work? How is it decided? So people got together and decided it. But the way God originally made it was that there were 70 children of Noah. They spread throughout the world, and they represent the nations of the world. So it could be that you have Pakistan and India, which was really one country, and then they split up between religions. So Pakistan became Islam, and then in India became Hindu, and there's Hindu. There you go. And they're still and they're fighting between each other about small parcels of land because of over religious things. But really, they're the same type of nation. They're the same people. They just believe in different things, and so on and so forth. It's regions more than people deciding where to make countries. I'm not sure if Syria and Lebanon are much different than one another. It's just one was a Christian, one was supposed to be Muslim. It's all messed up anyway now. But that's how it is. It's just the way people decide. Like the Holy Land is not the way Israel is today. Israel only has part of the Holy Land. There are other parts of the Holy Land, including parts of the land of Syria, that belong to the Holy Land. So who decides where it is? You're not following what the Torah wants. You're just following how people parcel it out. Okay, so but that's countries, but that's not nations. The 70 nations are represented by the 70 descendants of Noah. And incidentally, in next week's Torah portion, we find about 70 descendants from Jacob. Also 70, at number 70. So what happens on Sukkot? So on Sukkot, we offer, as I said before, the Torah commands the Jewish people to offer 70 bulls. What's the number 70? You don't find that in Passover. You don't find that on Shavuos. You don't find that on Rosh Hashanah. You don't find that on Yom Kippur. You don't find that on any of the other biblical holidays. Only on Sukkot. Comes along the Talmud and says, that's for the nations of the world. Sukkot is a universal holiday. We do it outside. We build the sukkah outside, outdoors, so that the whole world should be able to see about God's protection. Exodus, that was the Jews. Giving of the Torah, that was the Jews. Rosh Hashanah, that's not just the Jews, it's the whole world. So we blow something, it makes a noise. Hopefully it reaches outside. But Sukkot, that's for the whole world as well. It's for us to celebrate, but to have in mind all the other nations of the world. So 70 bulls represent the 70 nations. Comes along the Talmud and says as follows: had the nations of the world understood how critical the service in the temple would be for them, they would send legions of soldiers to protect the temple. The blessings that came to the nations as a result of the service of the Jewish people in the temple, specifically during this holiday of Sukkot, was so much that if they would have understood that, instead of sending soldiers to destroy it, they would have sent soldiers to protect it, because it's good for them. Okay, then the question becomes, so why is it getting less? Why not offer the first day 7, and the second day 8, and the third day of the festival 9, and the 7th day of the festival 13? You build up. Why going down? So the Talmud says that the reason, the Hasidic explanation is because the nations of the world should have sent legions of soldiers to protect the temple, but they didn't. And there was always trouble. There was always enemies. Hanukkah is a perfect representative of enemies that came in during the time of the temple, and they wanted to destroy the Judaism of the Jewish people, the godliness, the divinity of the Jewish people. And there's always been challenges throughout. If you read the books of the prophets, there's the constant bickering and fighting over territory, and then they tried to get to the temple, and eventually they came in and destroyed it both times. So in order to weaken the aggressiveness and the hatred and the rebelliousness of the nations, the service worked backwards. It became lower. 13 on the first day, 12 on the second day, 10, 11 on the third day, to weaken this the unsavory elements that may be represented by the nations of the world. So just like Hanukkah is a time where we are supposed to light up until the Talmud people, the legs of the Talmud people stop wandering around. In other words, to get rid of the darkness, to get rid of the legs of the darkness and the legs of the rebellious people. Similarly, on Sukkot, we offer the offerings going downwards to destroy the element of evil or aggressiveness or hatred that the nations had towards the Jewish people, to temper that. Once you've destroyed that, then their purpose of being around Israel would be to help Israel, to help the Jewish people. That sounds very
Wonderful.
exactly, and very ambitious. That's the concept of Hanukkah. That's why Hanukkah is a universal holiday. That's why we're lighting the menorah outside. People don't realize, oh, you're taking a Jewish thing, it's Jewish service. It's supposed to be in your house and putting it out in the street. No. It's supposed to be in the street. It's supposed to illuminate, it's supposed to send a message to the whole world, to the Jewish people, of course, but to the whole world. That we have the ability to illuminate even the darkest elements. The Shabbos candles inside the house are supposed to illuminate the home. It's just deliberately made that way. But the Hanukkah candles are made to illuminate the outside, the street. That's the point. That was the purpose of the whole holiday. There are Jewish people in this country who are very opposed to making public lightings. Why do you have to flaunt your Judaism out in the street? Reminds me of the time I went to London. My sister, who lives very close to Heathrow Airport, not in a typical Jewish neighborhood. There are those in London, but she lives not there. She lives near the airport. There's a synagogue. He's a rabbi of the synagogue there. But the community is sort of a mixed community. And we were told, I was there for Shabbos, we were told that take all of your stuff before Shabbos to the synagogue. Like, don't walk in the street with your talis on, because the people, we don't like to attract unnecessary attention. Okay. Shabbos came in that week about 3:30 was candle lighting. It's very, very early over there. And I didn't get there till the last second. And the next morning, I had not had a chance to carry. You're not allowed to carry on the Shabbos. So I couldn't carry it to the synagogue. The next morning, I put on my talis in the house that I was staying. And I was about to leave the house to go to the synagogue. Somebody said to me, hey, well, hold on a second. You're wearing your talis. How, you can't do that. I said, well, what else should I do? They said, well, I don't know, but, it causes unnecessary attraction. I said, tell me, without my talis, do you think I look any... You think I look normal without my talis? I look like a freak without it anyway. The beard, the hat, the long black coat. What difference does it make what else I'm wearing? So the point is, you're going to light the menorah out there. Keep your Judaism private. Oh, yeah? And what do you think I look like when I walk through Kroger? Or when I walk in the street? Or when I drive? What do you think people think? Who cares? I'm over that. This past Friday, I was in the Atlanta airport for 2.5 hours. From 9:30 to 12:30, for 3 hours. And there would not have been enough time for me to come home and then go back again. I mean, I could have been here for an hour and a half. What would be the point? But I had to daven. So, but my problem wasn't davening. I'll daven anyway. But my problem was I needed a space to type and to send out the stuff from the internet. So I needed a quiet, secluded spot. So I went to one of the, I said, can I go into the first class line? I tried that first, and they wouldn't let me in unless I paid whatever it was. And so they said, do you want a private spot? Go to this, behind this gate, there's a little area over there. There was somebody sleeping. There's like a bunch of flat seats, about 10 or so. I go over there. So I went over there, I took out my talus, and somebody was sitting there. I said, you'll excuse me, please, but I'm going to now pray. And when I pray, I wear this white sheet. I strap black leather boxes to my arm, my head. I put on a white sheet. So, but I'm not trying to make any trouble here. It's just praying. Oh, no problem. No. And without my talus and tefillin, you think I look normal? I wasn't looking for a secluded spot. I walked through the airport. I walked through the mall. I walked through the streets the way I am. I'm past that. I can't change my external appearance. So I know I feel all the eyes on my back. It's okay. That's all right. I'm used to it.
Yeah, but that's okay for you, but when I was growing up in St. Petersburg in the 50s and 60s, being Jewish was not easy. My dad would have swastikas on his, however you pronounce it, on the windows of his store. I was called every name you can think of in high school. I didn't hide it. We had a small little congregation of maybe 50 people. I'm sorry, unless you walk in somebody else's shoes.
You didn't hide it?
I always wore my Jewish star. I never hid my Jewish star, but I sure didn't broadcast what I was. There was no way I was going to do that. It was really rugged.
It's funny. They found your father even though he was hiding.
Well,
isn't that funny?
I understand that.
So, in other words, they're not. No matter what you look like, it wouldn't make a difference. They're going to they'll hunt us down. They're looking for us. So, what difference does it make? Hiding doesn't help. Hiding from the Nazis helped a little bit if we had a sympathetic Pole or Ukrainian or whatever. But hiding, might as well. They're not interested in. They're going to look for us. They're going to find us, and they're going to. I've spoken to people who grew up in Russia, and their parents never even told them they were Jewish. And one day, all of a sudden, there was a fight in the street. Žid, Jew boy. They came home. The kid would come home and say, "What's going on over here?" Yeah, one of the neighbors know, and this was the secret that they thought they could hide. You can't hide it. You can't hide it. You might as well flaunt it.
I know.
You can do a lot more with flaunting it than hiding it. They want to see us suffer. When we go out there with pride, it might hit them in the eyes, but at the same time they'll say, you know what? We need to find people who we can make hurt. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for victims. They're not looking for trouble. They're looking for fun.
Well,
all right, good. Page 60. As our sages say, and this is the quote of the Talmud that I mentioned before, if the nations of the world would know how beneficial the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, is for them, they would surround it with kastriot in order to guard it. Look at 120, footnote 120. Kastriot is fortresses. So is the explanation and version of whatever. Okay. Alternatively, an army blockade, which is what they would surround it with protection. That's the bottom line. Now look at footnote 121, second paragraph. See also Talmud Sukkah 55b. Rabbi Yochanan said, woe unto the nations who lost something great when the temple was destroyed, but do not understand what they have lost. When the Beit HaMikdash stood, the temple, the altar atones for them because of all these bulls. But now that the Beit HaMikdash has been destroyed, who will atone for them? That's the answer. People say the Jews ignore the nations. Are you kidding me? This is all for them as well. They're all part of this. They're all God's people as well. So back to the inside. After causing the nations to experience a transformation, the nations become the vehicle for an increase in protection, even for holy matters. Once you've gotten them on your side, once you've illuminated the darkness, you've taken away the dark elements of the nations, then whatever is left behind is all goodness. then they will increase for protection for holy matters. The guarding of the Beit HaMikdash, the guarding of the temple. And let's continue on. This is similar to what will occur in the future. In the future, the era of the Mashiach. Firstly, as the verse says in the book of Zephaniah, one of the prophets, I will then transform the nations to serve him, God, as one. That at that time they will all be ready to serve God. In fact, what is happening today with all these religions that seem to be an offshoot of Judaism and everything else is just preparing them. They're all ready to serve God. Billions of people in this world are ready to serve God. They're focusing in the wrong areas, but they're basically ready. They're ready to accept God because they already do accept God, so many of them. They're not necessarily following the exact right path, but they're prepared for this. And then, this is from the book of Isaiah, foreigners will rise and shepherd your flocks. Now, look at footnote 125. In the Messianic era, the nations will first experience a transformation, and then they will assist Israel, the land, the people. They will shepherding your flock doesn't mean that they'll be your slaves, which is how some people choose to interpret this, which is completely false. There's no slaves in the time of the Messianic era. Everybody is free. The whole world is free. What it means is that they will then be focused on doing what they can to help us. You need to build a temple. The Muslims are going to come along and say, which is about as incredible, we need to take that dome down over there. That's Mashiach, big time. That's almost the impossible to even fathom. That's not, for me, it's not impossible. But the way things are today, it doesn't seem that could be a reality without starting World War 15. Anyway, back into the text by footnote 125. And this is similar to the offering of the 70 bulls, which corresponds to and transforms the 70 nations, so much so that through and because of the nations, an offering is added for the Jewish people on the 8th day of Sukkot in the Beit HaMikdash. That means on the 8th day in the temple, the 8th day of the holiday, it doesn't follow the sequence of the 70. That once the 70 are offered by day number 7, on the 8th day, one bull. That's representative of the Jewish people. And that's the only festival that only one bull is offered. All the other ones are others, 2 or 4, but this one is 1. So let's look at footnote 126. After the nations are sublimated and transformed by the 70 bulls offered on the first 7 days of Sukkot, they add, albeit somewhat indirectly, a special sacrifice for Israel, which is offered on Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of Sukkot. The Talmud states, Rabbi Eliezer said, to whom do the 70 bulls of Sukkot correspond? To the 70 nations. To whom does the single bull offered on the 8th day of Sukkot correspond? To the single nation, or Israel. This can be likened to a king who ordered his servants, prepare for me a great banquet. When it was over, he asked his dearest friend, prepare a small meal so that I may enjoy your intimate company. All the rest of the people that I like are going, but we have a special relationship. One more day, one more meal just for us. Similarly, God tells Israel, please make for me a small feast on the 8th day so that I can enjoy your exclusive company. Your parting is difficult for me. It's hard for me. We're going away. That's the end of the biblical holidays, and the next one is Passover. You got to go through a dark winter and so on. Hence, the one bull and one ram sacrificed for Israel on Shmini Atzeret comes as a result of the sacrifices of the previous 7 days being offered for the nations. So we're offering for the nations, and then we are saying we need one more for the Jewish people. The 70 brings the one. The nations help the Jewish people already in the temple times, because they as a result of their offerings for their sakes and for their purpose, the Jewish people get their own offering as well. So here's another connection to Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is a reference, of course, to the Jewish people's defeating an enemy. Ultimately, though, its purpose is to illuminate even the darkest elements of the world so that they can be transformed into bearers of light as well. And that does it for today. And next week is the day that we conclude this essay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.